everyone's week is off to a good start wherever you are around the country. It's summer. It's summer where I am. Um, this time last week, I was in Austin, Texas. That's a different kind of summer than Sacramento, than El Dorado Hills, but it is summer here as well. So I'm grateful today for air conditioning. Um, it's the little things that sometimes in the morning you're like, wow, it sure is nice that it's already cool in this office when I walk in. Um, but let's just start this morning. And I'll kind of set this up a little bit. Last week, if you guys were here last week, this kind of did a part one of this, although they don't necessarily build on each other. You're always free to go back on the Facebook page and watch last week's if you missed it. But last week I went through a series of questions that really were self-reflective type questions, questions to ask yourself. Gave you a list of a handful of questions to do, and I hope some of you guys took that to heart and wrote down those questions and then spent some time over the last week writing down your reflective answers to what those things were. Um, this week, we're going to move into questions directed towards our clients, helping them get clarity. And then we're actually going to do a part three of this next week. And the conclusion next week on it is questions to, I guess the best way of saying it is questions to help you set appointments. Or maybe a different way of saying that, questions to get your clients to take a next step with you. Internally on our team, that was one of the topics that has come up recently in like just from a skill development perspective is, we're talking to a lot of people on the phone, we're seeing people at church, we're running to people at open houses. But the connecting of the dots to take that to a next step to get them to talk to a loan officer, to get them to talk, to sit down and do a buyer consultation or listing consultation. We're working on some skill development stuff around that particular topic that we're going to talk about next week. The reason why we're not doing it now is I think there's some other foundational things that we need to hit on before we ever get to kind of the appointment setting part of it. And so this deck that we're going to go through today is just questions that create clarity. Because in this business, well, in life, but in real estate specifically, is I think that there are real estate agents out there, and I guilty of this at sometimes too, to be sure. But the mindset of a lot of agents out there is that we've got to convince our clients to do something. If we had just the right words to say, we could be really persuasive and we could talk them into something. And first, I don't think that's true. You can't make somebody do something they don't want to do regardless, anyways. But probably even more importantly than that, is that really who we are as an industry? Is that really who you are as an agent, where you're trying to talk somebody into something? Really, I think how to reframe that is that we are in the business of giving giving our clients clarity. Because when people are confused, when they're stressed out, they make no decision. But clear people are willing to move forward. And if you've been around some of these conversations in the past, I talk about friction a lot. And friction is just an idea in physics that when there is friction on a surface, things don't move. And we could replace this center circle right here, uncertainty, with the word friction if we chose to. But the friction that we find ourselves in conversations with clients are kind of some of the things that we talked about last week, actually, is that the client is fear of making a mistake. They're afraid of paying too much for a house. They're overwhelmed by just the number of options that are available to them. They're overwhelmed by the number of voices that are giving them advice. There's some sort of internal conflict. There's also maybe a fear of missing out. Like If I buy this house, what if a better one comes on the market? What if rates go down? You know, all those different things. So people get stuck where they're in this point of uncertainty. And so what we're going to walk through today is kind of four different types of questions, four different buckets of questions to help add certainty to your clients and to help remove friction. So if you guys are note takers, this would be a great time to get out your iPad, your Remarkable, your number 2 pencil, your favorite Rick Bic, whatever. I had a pen and name in mind that I totally just lost. Rollerball, something like that. But get out your favorite writing utensil and a piece of paper, and I would just write these down. These four different buckets of questions. In fact, I think you're going to probably want to write down things on the slides that follow as well. So the first type of question is a discovery question. And that is really going below the surface and uncovering things that actually matter. Asking a second or third layer deep question to really unearth what the concern your client truly has. Okay, the second type of question is perspective. Perspective is giving them multiple alternatives about how to look at a particular problem or a particular situation. They've got their mind going in one direction, and these types of questions open up their mind to other possibilities. The third type of question here is calibration questions. Is again kind of digging a little bit deeper, but trying to find out what the real obstacle is without sounding salesy, without forcing it on them, without creating any sort of pressure on them. And then the last level then is commitment, is asking the types of questions that will get them to take that next step with you, where it just feels naturally that they would get into a business relationship with you. They would sign a contract with you. Okay. So discovery, perspective, calibration, and commitment. So let's start with the discovery questions. By the way, I shared this with our sales team yesterday. Just to give you some perspective on where this came from. I actually spent some time with my favorite robot this weekend, and knowing that this was a hot topic for us. And I said, okay, look, here's the challenges we're facing. Here's some of the concerns that the team is bringing. Here's some of the obstacles we're facing out there with our clients and with other agents and whatnot. So help me put together questions that create clarity. And machine, I want you to do it through the lens of really four different influences. So the first influence, I said, please hearken to Phil Jones and what he writes in his books. Second, I said, call on Chris Voss. Chris Voss wrote the book Never Split the Difference, an amazing book. So give me some tonality that sounds like Chris Voss. I said, let's use some NLP. Let's use some neurological programming words. And then lastly, some words of agreement. So although this came as my brain, I just so y'all know, is I've got a thought partner on most of this work that I'm doing. And I encourage you guys too. And if you guys are struggling with kind of that AI piece, how to have a thought partner, how to utilize AI to work behind you, feel free to reach out, and I'll give you some tips on some things that I'm learning as I go through right now too. But anyways, going back to the discovery questions. So the discovery questions is this. As you will see on each one of these questions, they're all open-ended. None of them are yes and no questions. Right. So from the very beginning, it is, what has you considering making a move now? Let's not be assumptive. They've called you for a reason. They've walked into your open house for a reason. They called on your sign, whatever it happens to be. But let's just start from a point of curiosity here and ask the question, what has you considering making a move right now? The next question then goes kind of a layer deeper rather. And that is, what would have to happen for this to feel like the right time to buy a home, the right time to sell your home, the right time for you to talk with a loan officer about what you qualify for. The right time to meet with my general contractor to see how much the remodel would cost so that you get a return on your investment when you sell. And then the next one, I actually really like these next two questions quite a bit is what has changed over the last 6 months? So you're calling me now, or you've walked into my open house now, you've answered my phone call now. Uh, we weren't talking 6 months ago, but now you are having this thought about real estate. So I'm just curious, what has changed in your life over the last 6 months that has you thinking about real estate now? Again, kind of digging below the surface a little bit more. And the fourth question on here is a super telling one, is if nothing changed for another year, what would that cost you? Let that one sink in for a second. If nothing changed for another year, what would that cost you? Let's make that practical for a second. Is you're meeting with somebody who is an empty nester. They're living in a 4,000 square foot house and it's just the two of them. And in fact, they never even go upstairs anymore. I'm just curious, if nothing changed over the next year, what would be the cost of you staying here for another year? How much would you be paying for utilities to heat and cool a house that you don't even live in most of? How much would it cost you to continue to care for the yard or hire the housekeeper for the space that you're not using? Maybe they're an older couple and it's a two-story house and it's one of those things like, man, are you really willing to stay in this house another year? What would that cost you physically to stay here? Right? Or maybe it's a situation where they're making a long commute to work and their goal is really to live closer to work, but they just can't quite connect the dots. So let me ask you, I know doing this super commute every day is just taxing on you. You're spending an hour in the car each direction. You're 2 hours in the car every day, time that you could be at home with the family. So if you continue to do that for another year, what would that cost you? Okay. And that last question is, what are you trying to protect? What are you afraid of? What are you resisting? Okay. So just some ideas in there about some discovery questions that as you're talking to somebody, again, this could be at an open house. This could be someone that you're talking to on the phone that is called on one of your signs. Maybe just as you're reaching out to your database and making phone calls, whoever it happens to be, consider incorporating some of these questions into your conversation to kind of get below the surface and really spur them to open up about what has them thinking about real estate right now. And let's go over to the perspective questions. So again, these are the ones where they have their mind set in a certain direction, and now we're encouraging them to look at alternatives. Okay. And this, I love the byline here. Perspective questions help clients discover the answer instead of being told. I mean, think about this in your own life. How often do you like being told what to do? Right? Make your bed, brush your teeth, do your dishes. I mean, those are just the things that Jen told me this morning. Ha 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 ha. I'm sure you guys are all laughing at home. It's always hard to tell if my jokes land when I'm talking to a screen. But nobody wants to be told what to do. Really, people want to discover the answer for themselves. And so these types of questions encourage people to think and then verbalize what their thoughts are. And some of these questions might feel natural to you. Some of these questions might be questions you used in the past. Some of these questions might sound like something you would say, and some of these might be a little bit uncomfortable, and perhaps they're not even applicable to your conversations. And if that's the case, I would say take a look at each of these five and figure out how you would rewrite that same intentionality that would help people, that would encourage your clients, the person you're on the phone with, to think about the situation they're in a little bit differently. Okay. So the first one, What would your future self thank you for doing today? Right? You've had this dream of being of owning a home. You've only ever rented, and you're nervous about about your mortgage payment. You're nervous about being tied to a 30-year mortgage. Those are all real emotions, right? What if you asked that type of person, what would your future self thank you for doing today? Would your future self thank you for buying this home and taking this step of faith into home ownership? The next one I think is super powerful is what advice would you give your best friend if they were in the same situation you find yourself in right now? It's a great question to ask and then just sit back and let the silence fill in any awkward tension in the room or on the other end of the phone line. So you float that question out there and it gives them a time to think and it makes them then answer it back so that they are, in a sense, giving themselves advice. The next one's kind of a more of a practical real estate one that we hear right now is, oh, I'm going to wait for rates to go down. I'm going to wait till rates are 3% again. I'm probably not going to hear that one. But I'm waiting for rates to go down. Just float the question. What do you think happens if rates go in the other direction? Okay. Next one is like kind of future pacing is that if you knew everything would work out, what would you do? We talk about this a lot during like kind of goal setting season in real estate. If you knew that you couldn't fail, what would you do? It's another version of this, but if you knew everything would work out, what would you do here? And then the last one, write this one down if you haven't already, and work this into your repertoire. What would have to be true for waiting to be the better decision? Someone says, "Hey, I'm gonna wait for prices to come down. I'm gonna wait for rates to come down." It's valid. Those are things that we hear, but just ask the question, what would have to be true for waiting to actually be the better decision? And they say, oh, well, then I can get it. I can get it for a better price. I can get it for a lower payment. And then you can pepper in that question to above. Well, what do you think happens if things go the opposite way? What if prices go up? What if rates go up? What if inventory goes down? What if there's less choices? So what would your future self thank you for if you did today? Right? You can kind of see how these can build on each other and they can be interchangeable in the same conversation, right? Uh, so let's move over to the calibration questions. And again, these are kind of stolen right in the same type of way that I think Chris Voss would talk about it. Is they're low pressure type questions, but they really help you reveal the truth or help your client reveal the truth to you. So instead of asking something like, are you ready? That's a yes, no question, number one. And can mean a lot of different things to a lot of different people. Instead of saying that, just ask the question, what are we still trying to solve? Another way of saying that same thing is, what is the missing piece? So what are we trying to solve here? Next one, instead of saying something like, do you want to buy this home? Do you want to make an offer on this home? Let's soften it up a little bit. What would need to happen for you to feel comfortable moving forward? I mean, just even in your own head, think about receiving that question. Think about receiving that question if you were at a car dealership. Think about if you were receiving that question when you were considering making a big purchase. What would have to happen for you to feel comfortable moving forward? I didn't just say, do you want to buy a house? I didn't just say, do you want to sign an agreement? I didn't just say, do you want to list? I didn't just say like big commitment here. I'm asking a question that creates curiosity and creates conversation. What would need to happen for you to feel comfortable moving forward with fill in the blank? And then let them speak. Okay, rather than should we write the offer, what is keeping this from being an easy yes? Powerful. What is keeping this from being an easy yes that's holding you back right now? Don't presuppose their answer. And again, having them verbalize it a lot of times will get them to a point of saying, you know what, nothing. This is an easy yes. I'm ready to go. Right. And then rather than, do you have any questions or does that make sense? What am I missing? Meaning, I've told you about a lot of things this morning. You probably had some questions when I got here. You probably had some uncertainty when I got here. What am I missing? Anything else that I should answer for you? Okay. So which of these questions could you use this week with a client? Which of these questions could you use with a spouse, with a child? Those are always good practice things. And then I would write this down as kind of the bonus on it fits on a lot of these categories, but it really fits well here on the calibration questions is following up any of these questions with either tell me more about that or whatever answer they give you back, give that back to them in the form of a question again. So as an example, what is keeping this from being an easy yes for you? Well, I'm concerned about the inspections. Just simply say back in the form of a question. You're concerned about the inspections? Just take the last 2, 3, 4 words of the sentence they just said, add inflection to your voice with a question mark at the end, and let them clarify to you back what the statement was that they just made. What's keeping this from being an easy yes? We're concerned about the condition of the home. You're concerned about the condition of the home? Well, yeah, I mean, we saw the blankety blank under the house. You saw the blankety blank under the house? Yeah, well, I mean, that could be a big deal to fix. Great. Now we really know what the heart of the objection is here, the heart of where the confusion or the friction is. And now we can help to solve to that, to take them to the next thing. And then at the bottom of the sheet here too, it talks about labeling, using phrases like, it seems like what you're saying is. What I'm hearing you say is. It sounds like what you're saying is. It sounds like what you are feeling is. Help me understand more about the inspections. Help me understand more about your concern on the price. Yeah. These are all gold. I hope you guys are writing these down this morning. Yeah. So let's talk about commitment questions. I love the first one, right? And this is not meant to be a sales trap. This is not meant to feel salesy. They're not setting them up for something. It's logic. I think all too often we sit down with people and we're given this presentation. Like, I mean, look at this happy couple looking at comps with this competent real estate agent with her iPad out and her little magic pen. It's just stopping, making eye contact with the decision makers and just ask the question to them. What feels like the next logical step? Well, gosh, sounds like we need to get our house on the market. Gosh, sounds like we should probably get inspections scheduled. Man, sounds like we should be meeting with your loan officer. Great. Well, then all we have to do to have that happen is let's just sign some paperwork and then we can put the plan in place. Ask them the question, how should we move forward? I presented you this information. We've had this great conversation tonight. Thank you for having me into your home. Thanks for the cup of coffee. It was delicious. I'm just curious. How should we move forward from here? They'll tell you. They're probably a lot closer to agreeing to work with you than you think, frankly, if you've gone through this in the proper format. Right? Well, let's just say they still have some indecision about if they should make an offer or not. If they're deciding between two houses, if they're deciding between two agents, you and somebody else, I'll tell you what, I don't mind. Let's go through a little exercise. Would it make sense for us to look at the two best options side by side? Let's just write down a pro and a con list of each one. Get out a little sheet of paper, draw a line down the middle, put option one on one side, option two on the other. And let's just line them out. Have them fill in the blanks on what the best options are, where the pros and the cons are for each one. Ask questions like, where do we go from here? And then the bonus question for those of you so bold. Would it be ridiculous to take one small step towards clarity? Would it be ridiculous to take one small step towards clarity? I dare you to use that one. In fact, someone please use that with a client and then send me a text and let me know how it landed. Okay. So a couple more things is I think when we're in conversation, and again, we're still work like this, we're all work in progress here. And we are coming from a place of, if we've gone through these four buckets, we are coming from a place of curiosity. We're coming from a place of genuine care. We are active listeners. We're helping them self-discover. We're a work in progress on those things, right? And yet there are still moments where our old selves step in and our kind of our natural tendencies might start to creep. So consider these phrases. As someone is giving you an objection, as somebody is telling you maybe something that they have an issue with you about somehow performance-wise, let's validate their concern. And let's start with agreement before we offer them another question or another alternative. So they can say, look, we've seen your comps, and I understand that you think that our home is worth $800,000, but we really want to go with 825. Rather than saying you're crazy, rather than saying whatever thought just came to your mind. Bring back. I can appreciate that you want to get the most amount of money for your home. If this were my home, I would probably feel the same way trying to maximize the profit. I think it's a fair concern that you don't want to underprice your home. And I can see why selling the home for that price, I can see why that matters to you. But what would make it feel less risky? What would have to happen such that we would do this other thing instead? Okay. So what I'm getting at here is they're making a statement, they're giving you a concern, and you're going to validate their concern. It is real. You're validating where they're coming from. And you start with agreement first, and then you give them an alternative. And then lastly here is these programming words, NLP, neurological programming. And this kind of falls in that same bucket of future pacing. Some alternative questions for you to consider. Instead of asking some of the questions maybe you typically would ask, think about phrasing them this way. So rather than do you want to buy a home, do you want to buy this house? Rather, ask the question, what would owning this home make possible for you and your family? Let them visualize themselves. Rather than asking a question like, what are you worried about? Let's flip that over and just ask that slightly differently. What would have to happen that you'd feel completely comfortable, right? Not what are you worried about, but what would have to happen that would have you feel completely comfortable? And we did this last one already to some extent, but instead of asking what if rates drops, just give them the opposite. What if they don't? See that this type of language, and we could spend hours and hours on NLP, days and days really, but this is the type of language that should help clients imagine the consequences of both the action they're considering and also the inaction of not doing anything at all. Okay. So that's our tour for today. So I hope that was beneficial. I'll just go back to the very beginning here. Again, think about the four categories: discovery, perspective, calibration, and commitment. And my my action item for today, our momentum challenge for this week is which of these questions are you going to use? Take this to heart. Go start practicing. Again, could be a role play with a live person. It could be somebody in your office. Uh, Honestly, do it. Practice on a spouse if you need to. But then put yourself in front of a real live human being where you can utilize these. Get yourself at an open house this weekend and have these questions on your little pad ready to use them on somebody. On your phone calls today, when you're calling your sphere of influence today and talking to your folks today, have your little pen and pad next to you for what you just wrote down and work some of these into the conversation and see if that works out differently for you. Um, so there we go. As always, guys, if anything resonated today, my ask is go take action. Not just be here as a passenger, not just be here watching and listening, but go take something that you heard today, if it resonated with you, and go put it in play for your business. And until next week, where we come back and unpack version 3 of this, which is essentially how to use this same type of language and mindset to actually set appointments. Come back next week for that one. But in the meantime, make this week count. If you need me for anything, you know where to find me. And I hope that I can hang this thing up because earlier today I couldn't. And it's going to be super awkward if I can't figure out how to hang this up and Laura's not here to help me. I can't make it go away. Ah. Stop the broadcast. Stop the broadcast. Make it stop. I can't do it.